Well, to help us unpack most of these headlines, Arise business analyst and anchor Boason Omofaye joins us now for more on this. Good to have you, Mr. Boason.
Good afternoon. Great to have me. Thank you so much.
All right, so can you help us out with this Eurozone inflation? It fell in January due to a slowdown in these food prices, yes. in the increase of the food prices. Could you explain a little bit more about what's going on in that situation?
I think it's the latest data sort of played into what the IMF said in its report, which was released 3 days ago, that there is a deceleration in global inflation, headline, and that could push more economic growth to happen in the U.S., in many of the leading emerging markets, economies like China around the world, and a few others. So Europe's latest inflation seemed to play into that from 2.9 to 2.8%. Just a few tweak there, but again, it's not yet uhuru in a manner of speaking, because Europe will still have to deal with the energy issues arising from the Ukraine and Russian war. So they've had to deal with that. There are new geopolitical issues and disturbances and crises happening on top of crises elsewhere in the world, with the Middle East and whatsoever. How those crises, if they have logistic and food supply constraint issue to shipping, as we're beginning to see that in the Red Sea and the Houthis rebels, if that begins to play, then you could see a bit of an issue in food prices creeping up back in within the Eurozone. But so far, it looks like it's good news. France GDP for last quarter was flattish, in a manner of speaking. That's no good news in a manner of speaking. It's not so good. The French farmers are still on strike, protesting in a manner of, not so strike, but protesting as we speak. They have this 50 billion euros or $54 billion in aid to Ukraine also on the table. So it's not yet best of the time for Europe as we speak. The European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, the president, spoke just 2 days ago, holding the interest rate unchanged. Yesterday, the U.S. Central Bank also left interest rate unchanged. Today, the Bank of England and Dubai also left interest rate unchanged at about 5.25%. So you've seen the central banks holding rates still for now. They're not raising rates, they're not cutting, but they're just holding. And that means that they're just holding the handles, as it were, because the storm is not yet over. Even though the IMF says that the risks are broadly balanced right now as far as global growth is concerned, but it's still very tentative in a manner of speaking. So we need to watch it and just watch how many more new geopolitical risks will happen. President Biden and the US is yet to respond in a manner of speaking to what is accusing Iran. Iran has said if U.S. responds, they are going to go after the United States, whatever that means. So the tensions globally are not over yet. So is 2.8% something to celebrate? Well, it's something to have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee over, but don't go to, still keep one eye open, in a manner of speaking, economically. And I'm sure the European Central Bank and others within the policymakers in Europe are not sleeping yet. How's the market taking that? The market is a little bit mixed. The market is expecting something better, but again, we saw 2.8% for Eurozone inflation. So that means that the markets are still looking at further guidance. The earnings are coming through from many of the companies in Europe as elsewhere in the world. You have Volvo earnings today. You have BNP Paribas, one of the biggest banks in Europe. A few others. Santander came in just yesterday or early yesterday. So all of these will come into play for investors to consider and see the guidance from the private sector. So I'll be watching out for a few more data for January, which will be the Eurozone PMI. Will be good to see when it comes out within the next 24 hours or so. We'd like to see how that manufacturing activity helps us to have an idea of what the state of health of the Eurozone. But this is some good news on the table. The market can use some good news. We can. We all can.
Well, definitely we all can. So let's talk about, Nigerian billionaire activist investor Femi Otedola, who is now the chairman of the board of directors of FBN Holdings, just 5 months, after becoming a non-executive director. What more can you tell us about that?
The banking and the financial services industry will come under some pressure as we're beginning to see moving forward. I think this is a good time for every bank and financial institution that has very close relationship with the banking sector, whether from commercial bank or investment banking arm, to have a very strong board and those who understand the power play in the boardroom and understand the deal making as far as the industry and the economy is concerned. Femi Otedola is not just an investor. It's not your run-of-the-mill vanilla investor. He is a deal maker. He's been in debt, he's been out of it, so he knows how to structure deals. If you remember the whole days of Xenon Oil and what have you, and how he managed to resolve that issue and move on to 40 Oil, African Petroleum, to 40 Oil, exit that, go into Geregu Power, invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Geregu Power. Now that is beginning to yield so much interest and what have you. So when you put all of this together, you need someone who understands corporate boardroom in Nigeria, and not just within the banking industry. So we've seen its antecedents in the oil and gas downstream sector, and we've also seen that in the upstream side of the energy sector, which is Geregu Power. So he understands the economy, not just banking or financial services, but he understands how the economy runs. He has an idea where deals will happen. Now, every bank or holding company for a bank, so as big as First Bank, would have to sit down now to be holding very strategic meeting. The central bank is firing on all fours right there at the banks. They need someone, they need a board led by someone who understands the economy and the politics of this country to help them, guide them through what is coming. The central bank also gave indication last year that there will be a recapitalization of banks. Are you going to see consolidation? Will there be mergers and acquisitions? Will First Bank, which is the icing on the cake for FBN Holdings, be looking to pick any of the smaller banks to acquire under the new regime of Cardoso, whether that happens this year or next year? All of this will be what boardrooms of big financial institutions such as FBN Holdings will be doing right now at the moment. These are very difficult times. Exchange rate has to do with naira value, customer deposit. People are stressed. The economy is stressed across all points. Therefore, you need a very good board right now, directors, led by someone who understands both the politics and the economy of Nigeria. Not just investing to make gains, but someone who understands the sharp edges of investing and deal making. That is the kind of person you need right now if you want to move forward and navigate the very tough waters that the economy is facing right now under this current administration, and how we move over the next 2, 3, 4 years or so. That's very important. So you need such a person on your side. To put it very nicely.
Very well said. The sharp edges of this financial sector.
It's very blunt.
It's a financial Game of Thrones, so to speak.
It's a Game of Thrones. And he is one of those on the throne.
Oh,
so
he's a power player.
He understands the power play. He knows the playbook.
Definitely.
He knows both the politics and business side of it. It's not enough to know banking or financial services. You need to know what happens at the political arena as well. You need to bring that deftness into it to help you understand where deals are being made and how your organization will get the better part of it. But I think it's another feather to his cap in a manner of speaking. But of course, you know, the FBN board of directors will have to also choose very carefully who they pick. If you pick someone who is weak and is not strong enough, then it's a minus for you. If you pick someone who understands and who is riding the wave of both the economy and the political economy of this country and in his industry, then you better have such person on board.
Listen,
thanks for having me on board.
It never stops.
Thanks for having me on board.